right. Welcome to 2023. Um, Not a whole lot exciting on the agenda. I did want to talk a little bit about kind of what happened last year and what's going to happen this year, but I don't have it'd be nice to have like a presentation for this, but I don't. Um, so you get what I can rattle off my head. 272 Ivana is going to talk to us probably about some new features in Grafana 9.4. Super exciting. And then if anybody has any other topics, anything they want to talk about, throw them on here. So what happened in 2022? This is a good question because time goes by really quickly. The big things that came to my mind, obviously the changing of the index. That was probably about a year-long project from design to we've now all of our clusters internally run on TSDB now. We'll probably be looking to do another release, maybe the 3.0 release for Loki, where we essentially promote that to being production ready. I would say at this point it's as good as production ready, although you want to be probably running from a newer version than 2.7, because I think we've got a couple fixes in, but actually probably what's in 2.7 is also going to work well. But very exciting for us. We are seeing all kinds of improvements, both in smaller indices, you know, as much as a third of the size. So on some of our tenants that are in the like, you know, 4, 5, 600,000 streams in a 24-hour period, the index went from about a gigabyte per day to 300 megabytes per day. So big wins there on size. Also, the ability for it to do the sharding dynamically on queries is allowing for much higher query throughputs. We see some queries on big clusters in the 300, 400, 500 gigs a second range now. I don't know that we've had one cross a terabyte a second. We've been very, very close. A couple 900 gig a second queries in there. And that largely is because we can parallelize more. The sharding factor on the Bolt DB index was only 16, so at most we could split by time and then by 16. Now we can split by time and by, I forget what the most will shard by, 10,000 or something really big. So if you have the hardware resources configured, you can throw a lot more parallelization at it. The other end of that spectrum now is that we're going to probably start looking at the storage. So that's in, I'll get to that in a second, I guess. And I'll tell you about why when I get there. But other fun things, you know, I would say largely as a team, we've grown a bunch. You know, Loki's been doing well. We've invested in the team and the people, and we're spending a lot of our time in building out our SaaS product, running Loki, because that is what allows us to build Loki. It's what allows us to monetize an open source project. So a lot of the work that we've been doing has been helping pushing bigger and bigger scales, because that's the problems that we've needed to be solved. So better isolations between tenants and multi-tenant systems, ways to do rolling upgrades on clusters that have, you know, several hundred ingesters in them, you know, those sorts of things. So unfortunately for like the community, probably a lot of folks aren't running at scales like that, but it does trickle down in a few ways. But I guess in the interest of disclosure, like that's sort of what drives a lot of our work, because it is what we're building and it allows us to give it away for free. So bear with us, because we have done a number of things to try to make it easier to run Loki in the form of what we call SSD, which the name has led to numerous confusion. But Trevor's here. Trevor's done a ton of work on our Helm chart now, which has been moved into the Loki repo again, so that we can hopefully keep closer eye on it. We're trying to really curate an experience around the Helm chart that's more opinionated, to get to where folks can have a similar install, so that we're hoping that with more people running Loki the same way, it makes it easier to flesh out problems and have a, you know, a more, I don't know, easy to operate experience. You know, it tends to be in sort of, I would say my experience here, that most folks that run Loki in a single binary, a lot of our usage stats show that this is the majority of the folks that send us usage data in the maybe 1 to 10 gigs a day. Single binary works great for this. When you start getting into the 500 plus or maybe a terabyte a day, you really do need to have a cluster with enough resources and configured well. And that stuff is tricky. And we're basically trying to do our best to continue to abstract configs away so that Loki can do that more automatically. SSD embeds a lot of the complexity of microservices, tries to take that away. The Helm chart we're trying to ship with, a set of settings that will, and we're not quite there yet, but we are working on it. And we want the single binary experience to continue to be really useful. I think one thing I learned this year was, this was a decision that I made to enable the parallelization of both sharding and splitting by time by default in the single binary. And I think that's actually led to a worse experience for some, because you're kind of on small amounts of data, you're sort of doing more work in the sort of setup and processing and recombining of the query than it used to take. So I'm going to try to figure out how to perhaps manage that a little bit better. TSDB will help here because the dynamic sharding won't shard things if it doesn't need to. But that's sort of the 2022. Anybody have any other fun things from 2022 that I missed you want to talk about? I don't know if Trevor, you want to include any more details?
Yeah, I'll say something quick. Sorry for the background noise. One of the other main goals of the work in the Helm chart is, before this we had I think the total, if you include the enterprise charts, was 7 different Helm charts. And so you had this, the community contributions were spread out over 7 different charts. And so each chart was getting so few of them. So we really hope that by pushing everyone to one chart, we can all benefit from the community contributions, and are really looking to the community to continue this work into the Helm chart and make it better. So if you're not using the Helm chart, I really encourage you, but you are using them. I encourage you to use this one so that we can also benefit from one larger mind share.
Yep. And a question that's been asked, what does that mean for the Loki distributed Helm chart or the other charts that we have? Are they going to be deprecated? The Loki distributed Helm chart was community contributed and community maintained. So I think what we would like to do, if we haven't done already, is try to push people towards using this newer chart. There is a way to do a conversion between the distributed mode and SSD mode. I believe we have some docs for that, or we will be working on some docs for that. It's just hard to manage the amount of stuff that has been built around Loki. There's an interesting problem for running a business around an open source project like this, is we want a lot of the features, imagine all of the agents that we have now that send stuff, but we also can't be experts in all of those things and don't have enough time to kind of continue to maintain and keep up. So we're probably going to start trying to be more opinionated and more clear about that, in terms of if you run Loki like this, you'll be running it how we do, in ways that we will have better support for, and also that if you're using this component, that the support for that would be largely community driven. So if you find a bug, you'll have to fix it yourself, kind of thing. Right now, I don't think we communicate that super clearly, and it's tricky because I don't want to take features away. I don't want to remove capabilities and agents and stuff. And I understand the frustration when someone is using a thing because it meets their requirement, doesn't work. There's no sort of perfect answer here for us, but we have to try to focus at least, or narrow our focus some, if we want to be able to move things forward. Otherwise, we get just mired down in being 1,000 miles wide and an inch deep. Okay, so what's coming in 2023? I don't know. I put question marks next to all of these things because we haven't totally figured it out yet. But we are looking a lot more into how the query execution works, and probably building a real query planner. I just alluded to the chunk storage. One side effect of querying as fast and as much as we do now is that the object storage providers, maybe they get a little grumpy at us sometimes when we request 200,000 or 300,000 objects per second. And the storage model for Loki right now, what I think lends itself extremely well for making it easy to ingest, does lead to a lot of small files, and small files are troublesome in a few ways. So I think it might be time for us to consider either post ingestion compaction or ways to build bigger chunks from smaller streams when we flush things. And when I say like running into trouble, I'm sort of talking about large clusters, like ingesting 40, 50 terabytes a day. So for very like 99.9% of folks, you aren't going to run into this with object stores. But we're kind of figuring out how to. There's an aspect of Loki storage that's always kind of bugged me a bit, is that it's really opaque and really hard to do manual operations around. And so that's something to like considering putting in some like human readable date prefixes around how we store things, so that it's a little bit less opaque. It's not that there's a lot you can do as a person, but it's kind of tough, if you did find yourself wanting to like look at chunks or move things and do physical operations on it. It's pretty tricky to do that because it's just a bunch of hashes and folders and things like that. And we continue to talk a lot about OpenTelemetry support. The OpenTelemetry collector has a Loki output plugin. You can use that today. We're trying to figure out how to make the experience a little bit better. If you have used it, you'll see we essentially encode a lot of data into JSON. And so you have to run JSON parsers to get back to the original line. You want to make that kind of, basically easier or more seamless, and try to figure out the OpenTelemetry data model has a lot of metadata associated with it. And we're trying to figure out basically the right way to manage that. Whether it's configuring it at the source or configuring it at the destination, or do you want to store all that metadata or not? So that's in the plans for what we want to do. And I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch more, but if you have things you really want for Loki, if you have feature requests that you really need or want, go open some issues up in the repo and let us know about it. Thumbs up stuff that you like, helping us to prioritize things is the best way, is getting a bunch of thumbs up on features that you want. And let us know. It's some ways, like I feel like the stats that we see, like we kind of maintain two things: an open source project for users that have like pretty like scale is always super relative, but smaller clusters and are super happy. And then we're trying to build a big distributed system that has sort of no bound to it. So those needs or those things don't always overlap, but Loki's been doing really well at both. I mean, I sort of still run on Raspberry Pis like 3 or 4 Loki setups. It does just fine. It's very, very happy with small hardware and small setups, and we want that to be the case forever. So, but it would be helpful if you have experiences with it at different scales to share them with us, so that we can make sure we're doing the best we can. And 2.7.2. That just went out. Does anybody who put that on there? Does anyone want to talk about it? Did the other folks? Because I know I don't think Christian can join, but
I think it was me. I think the most important thing of this release is the fix to multi-tenant querying. 2.7.1 broke it, but now it is fixed.
That was a good deal. We kind of missed the 2.8, so it's a bit busy for the next few weeks here. So I would suspect that a 2.8 should be following after that. So like late February, early March. I don't think we'll do the 3.0 next, because we got to kind of organize. There's a number of things within Loki that we'd like to fix. Renaming metrics, for example, that are tough for operators, and we'll probably put them under a 3.0 release. Not a huge amount of stuff, but there are some. I heard the dong message. Does somebody have a question? No. All right, Ivana, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
So hey everyone, I would like to share with you new features and updates that are coming in Grafana 9.4. And actually, I think 9.4 beta was released either yesterday or a couple days ago. So if you are interested to try them out, it's available, but the stable is coming in the next couple of weeks. So let me share the screen. Okay, so there is a couple of updates. I'm gonna point out the more visible ones, but definitely go into the changelog to see all updates and new features related to Loki and logging. So I would start with label browser. So label browser is quite popular feature to interact with your labels, to filter them based on other labels. And previously this was available only in cold mode. So we moved it and now it's available in bold mode. So it's at place. And while we were working on it, we also decided to move it into the modal. And this is especially useful in dashboards because in dashboards, when you are editing query, you have your panel options, you have your visualization, and query editor is kind of just like 1/3 of the screen. So label browser was quite like cramped in the space, and now you have like almost full screen where you can interact with your labels and filter them out. Moving on to a thing that was also mentioned, I think, on the previous community call, but it's going to be released in 9.4, so I decided to mention it as well. So we have implemented and added query validation in the code mode. So as you are typing your query, we are doing real-time validation, and in case you write something incorrect or something that produces incorrect LoQL, you are going to right away see it. And this is going to kind of, we hope it's going to speed up the process of like you writing the query and learning that, okay, maybe something is incorrect, or maybe I'm using unwrapped place that it's not supported. It also supports multi-line, so hopefully this is going to be beneficial for also like advanced user, but mainly for new users who are learning LoQL and discovering it. So that's a second thing. I'm looking into notes. Okay, so log details. We have done quite a lot of work related to the log details, and this is coming from a lot of like historical context. The log details were kind of messy because we were adding features, and then Loki was implementing like the features that log details was substituting. And when I'm talking about features, I'm talking about detected fields. So in the past, we used to have labels and detected fields. And a lot of users were confused about like, where is it detected? Is it coming from Loki? Why are there different sub features and so on? And we implemented detected fields because at that point of time, Loki wasn't implementing parsers. So we try to help users and show them key value pairs in the log details. But in, I think it was Loki 2, they implemented parsers, and now these detected fields are kind of obsolete and were causing much more confusion than it's needed. So that's the reason why we have decided to just show fields, which are basically labels, and we are implementing all features that were implemented in labels and in detected fields, and therefore we hope that it's going to be more straightforward, more understandable for users, and that for users it's going to be easier to understand where are these coming from. So if we run query with a parser, we see all labels here, but if we are not running query, with the parser, we see only labels that were there before. Moving on to log samples. So this feature is kind of similar to logs volume. So logs volume is basically seeing metrics for your log lines, and we have decided to implement something similar, but the other way around. So you are able to now see log samples for your metric. So if you run metric query and you would like to see samples of log lines that contributed to these metrics, you can click here on the log sample toggle, and it's going to give you and show you samples of those log lines. In the case that you would like to more interact with these log lines or maybe change them, you can use Open Logs in Split View button, and it's going to open split view with the log query for you. So depending on your use case, if you need to go deeper into your log lines and change the query, you can do it in split view. But if you would just like an overview that helps you to figure out like what labels you should use, or if you are debugging and looking for like specific log lines, maybe just log samples would be enough for you for this case. So that's log samples. And last thing and last feature that I would like to mention is estimating the size of the query. So maybe you'll notice that we have here this new message that is telling you approximation of how much data is going to be touched when you run this query. We are using for this new stats endpoint that Loki is providing and visualizing it for you. In the current implementation, it is showing you how much data will be approximately touched, but in the future, we are also thinking about making it like maybe more obvious, like showing you, okay, this is probably too much data, or hey, this is okay. So we are thinking about expanding and improving this feature in the future. So this and more is waiting for you in 9.4. So if after this short demo, you are excited to try it out, as I said, 9.4 beta is out. And does anyone have any questions?
No questions. Very excited though. I like how you're announcing a feature when it's available for. I like to talk about features that don't exist for a long time, and then like this list. How I started. We're gonna do this stuff this year, maybe. Thank you, Ivana. Did we get anything else on the agenda? That's it. Anybody have anything they want to talk about?
I actually have a question. So in the past, you used to have this GitHub issue where it was like, what are you looking for from Loki in 2021, 22? Is there a plan to do something for 2023? Because it was also beneficial for our Grafana team, as a lot of people also mentioned features that would be helpful for their flow. And in some cases, it was a feature that would be implemented in Grafana. So
yeah, I think the only hesitation I have was I think what's held me up from doing this, or us from doing this, is the single thread nature is kind of annoying, because people would sort of comment on other features in the thread. And I think we kind of tried to steer people into like doing that aside, but it's hard, right? Like so you get really long threads. So GitHub discussions would be a better place for this, but we don't have GitHub discussions enabled on the Loki repo. There's been some internal back and forth because it would lend itself nicely to some things, but it's like another place we have to go and keep track of, and we already have too many places that we have a hard time keeping track of. So maybe we just create another issue as a I'd be up for that though. We got a lot of good feedback from that last time. Totally agree. I think we skipped it last year, but yeah, maybe we can go do that. It's a good idea. Go revisit. I think we did a lot of this stuff. I know there was like out of order support was one of the ones on that one. We did that. Are you gonna pull it up now, Ivana? Like, go see what we had for. It got pretty long because it was up for quite a while, and then at some point it did get closed eventually, I think. But 2021, is that really when it was? There it is. Yep, it was down at the bottom. I saw it. 151 comments. Yeah, that's good. The first one I put on there were Deb and RPM packages, which I still refuse to do for Loki. We have them for I think log CLI now. Somebody slipped them by me, but yeah, let's make another one of these and see what's sort of relevant or new things people would like. I think it's a good idea. It's always hard to get feedback from the community. Like there's sort of not a great way to advertise, and we tend to hear when things don't work, and it's nice sometimes to hear when things do work too. So I could start an issue for like, tell us what you like about Loki so that we don't break that stuff. But maybe we should do that too. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up then. Welcome to 2023, and look forward to seeing you next month, seeing what we come up with. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks, Ed.